Now I want you to really picture this, if you will. You're in your garage. You decide, I'm going to clean my gun today. Your family's in the room next door. You start taking it apart because you know how to take it apart. You've done this 100 times before. You pull out the ammunition by removing the magazine. And at the same time you pull out that mag, you get a text from your buddy. You read the text, you answer it, you get distracted. You go to take the slide off the frame. You know that you got to actually press the trigger to do this. You pull the trigger. Boom! Your ears are ringing. Your heart is beating through your chest. You hear your family screaming in the room next to you. You see a hole in the wall that you just shot. Can you imagine what that would feel like? Now here's scenario number 2. You're walking along with your significant other through the mall, the food court. Some nut job stands up and just starts shooting people indiscriminately. You're 10 feet away. You know that if you don't do something right this second, you guys are going to die. Your heart is beating. You've got tunnel vision and you're freaking out. You're trembling. You know you've got to act quick. You do what you need to do. You draw that firearm. You present it. You're trying to steady your sights. He's starting to turn towards you and you guys lock eyes. And you know if you miss, you're done. You get your sights lined up. You feel really good about your shot. You know what your target is. You know what's behind it. You're cleared to go. You press that trigger. Nothing. You're pressing harder. Nothing. Now you're squeezing with everything you got. Nothing. You guys are deadlocked on eyes now. And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Picture those 2 scenarios. They're terrifying. I want to avoid those from ever happening to anybody. So the things I'm going to teach you today are going to do just that. If you follow these processes, your likelihood of having either of those scenarios happen go way down. There are freak accidents. There are brain farts. Things can happen. That's why you have to ingrain these safety habits, and they have to be automatic. Now, I know safety talk is boring, and everybody wants to watch the high-speed John Wick stuff, but I need you guys to get a solid understanding on these concepts first before you can go to that level. The fundamentals are so important. So what we're going to do today is I'm just going to show you how to properly load, unload, and check the status of 2 common firearms. I have a semi-automatic handgun and I have an AR-15 rifle. So 2 of the scariest things that could happen to a person with a firearm would be having the firearm go off when they didn't expect it to, or having the firearm not go off when they absolutely need it to. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to avoid both those situations from happening to you. My name's Brian Winden, owner of ACR Tactical. I'm a firearms instructor and a range safety officer. If you haven't already watched my safety video that I released, if you haven't already watched the safety video I put out the other day, please stop right here, go back and watch that, because the things I covered in that video will apply to what we're doing today. Alright, let's talk about the things that cause a firearm to go off when you didn't expect it to. They don't go off on their own. There is no magic goblin inside your gun that will make the firearm discharge. It is user error. So to avoid user error discharge, that sounds disgusting. To avoid firing your handgun when you don't intend to, the best thing you can do is keeping your finger off the trigger. If that trigger does not get depressed, the firearm will not fire. One of the most dangerous things we do with our firearms is reholstering them, believe it or not. Putting them away safely and making sure when the firearm, which I will clear for you right now, this is clear. When I put this firearm back in the holster, and say this is on my belt line, and I have it like this, and I just slam it home, and there was a piece of my shirt or a piece of brass or something else that had gotten in between where the trigger is and the kydex, when you push that home, the trigger's getting pressed. Another thing that happens is people that are in the terrible habit of keeping their finger on the trigger all the time, when they go to reholster, now your finger is pushing against the kydex, which is pushing the trigger back. Seating that will cause the firearm to discharge. So if you're carrying in an appendix position, can you imagine what that would be like to have the firearm go off while you're reseating your firearm into your holster? It scares me. To avoid having that happen to you, take your time. I visually watch my firearm go back into my holster. So when I'm reholstering, my finger's off the gun completely. I take a step forward so I don't shoot myself in the back of the foot, even if I did make a mistake. I'll get my cover garment completely out of the way. We'll watch the gun into the holster all the way till it seats. Now it's safe, and I don't have to worry about it going off. So check the status on a semi-automatic handgun. First thing I want to do is I'm going to pick up the firearm with my firing hand. For me, it's my left hand. I'm going to first check the ammunition supply. That is the magazine. It's removable. You're going to press the magazine release button, which is found next to the trigger guard. And with my support hand, I'm going to catch the magazine. The magazine out, now I can see that I have rounds in this magazine. If I was doing a status check to put this gun on my person to carry for the day, I would want to know, is the magazine full? Is there ammo in it? Etc., etc. So I check the status of the magazine. I'm going to reseat the magazine by keeping the firearm up in my workspace, oriented in a safe direction, finger off the trigger. I'm going to rotate the firearm so I can see the inside of the magazine well, and I'm going to take the magazine with the base of the magazine in the palm of my hand and my finger guiding the magazine into the magazine well. I'm going to firmly seat it, and then I'm going to do what's called a press check, because we have not addressed the chamber of this firearm yet. Press check simply means I'm going to pull the slide back about 1/4 of an inch, and what I'm looking for is in the chamber of this barrel. I want to make sure there's a round there. So I'm going to pull it back. I see a round in the chamber. I'm going to push it back forward. I'm going to give it a little bump and make sure that the slide is completely forward and locked into battery. I now know that this firearm is loaded. I know the magazine is full. I know there's a round in the chamber, and I know this thing is ready to fire if I were to pull the trigger. Now I'm going to safely reholster by bringing the holster without sweeping my hand with the firearm, and I'm going to reholster the firearm. Now it is protected, the trigger guard is protected, this thing will not go off. So now that we know this firearm is loaded, I'm going to show you how to properly unload it. You're going to grab the firearm with your firing hand, remove it from the holster if that's where it is, finger off the trigger, barrel pointing in a safe direction. The first thing you want to do is remove the supply of ammunition, which is the magazine. I'm going to press the magazine release button, and I'm going to remove the magazine. Throw it in your pocket, set it down, whatever. We still have a round in the chamber. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to rack the slide to the rear, ejecting the round. The next thing we're going to do is lock the slide to the rear. You're going to pull the slide back while simultaneously pushing up on the slide stop. It's the little lever here that goes up and down. When you pull the slide all the way to the rear while simultaneously pushing up on that lever and you let go of the slide, it should stay locked to the rear. Now I'm going to visually check inside the chamber, which is the barrel of the gun. I'm going to look inside the chamber. I do not see a round there. Then I'm going to look through the ejection port, and I'm going to make sure that there's no magazine, no round in the chamber. This firearm is now unloaded. If I were to hand this firearm to you, I would hold the firearm, the handle towards you, and I would let you know that this firearm is unloaded, check for yourself, and I would instruct you not to point it towards me. And that's how you unload a firearm. If you were storing this long term, I would let the slide forward. So to do an administrative load, first I want to just check the status of the firearm by locking the slide to the rear. I see there's nothing in it, this firearm is empty. I'm going to take my magazine the same way I showed you on the press check, base of my hand, finger on the pointy end of the bullets, guide the magazine into the magazine well. I'm going to rotate it over, and I'm going to either grab the slide and pull back and release it, and that will send the slide forward, or you can press down on the slide stop, which will also send the slide forward, like so. After I've done that, I want to do a press check. I want to confirm that there's actually a round in this chamber by visually looking at it. I will take the top of the slide and pull it back just enough. I see a round in the chamber. Slide goes forward, give it another bump. Double check your magazine is locked into place, because if it's not fully seated, it can go like this, where it looks seated, but you could actually pull it right out. The issue with that is you can fire one round, but the second round will not load into the chamber because the magazine is not fully seated. So then you would have an empty chamber on your second shot, which is a very scary scenario, but I'll show you how to fix that as well. All right, magazine is in, chamber is checked. If this firearm had a safety, I would make sure the safety was engaged. Then reholster. So that covers the semi-automatic handgun. Let's go through those again in real time. Status check. Firing hand, finger off the trigger, magazine out, checking it visually, not just taking it out for the sake of taking it out, looking at it, reseating, press check, firearm is ready to go. Safety is on if equipped. To unload, finger off the trigger, muzzle in a safe direction, magazine comes out, rack the slide, lock the slide, visually look in the chamber, visually look in the ejection port. This firearm is now clear. To perform an admin reload, I'm going to lock the slide to the rear. I'm going to visually look into that chamber. This firearm is unloaded. Take my magazine, insert it into the magazine well firmly, drop the slide forward, do a press check. It is good to go. Double check. Safety would go on if it has one. Reholster. All right, so that covered the basic operation of how to status check, load, and unload a semi-automatic handgun. Now we're gonna go over the AR-15 platform. The AR-15 functions pretty much the same way with a few little extra steps that I recommend you take. So if I were to check the status of this firearm to make sure it's ready to fight with, I would first check my ammunition by removing the magazine, verifying there are rounds in the magazine and that it's full. I would then reseat the magazine firmly, making sure it's seated. I would pull charging handle back just enough to where I could see inside the chamber of that weapon. I know that there's a round in this chamber. I will send the bolt forward, close my dust cover, make sure my safety is engaged, and the last two function checks that I will do is to verify that my optic is in fact turning on, and I will make sure my light switch works. Now this firearm is ready to rock. To unload my AR-15, the first thing I'm gonna do, remove the magazine. Next thing I'm gonna do, charging handle all the way back, sending the bolt forward, and then locking the bolt to the rear by pressing down on the paddle while simultaneously pulling the charging handle all the way back. I'm going to visually look inside that chamber. I'm gonna look in the magazine well. This firearm is now unloaded. If I was putting it away, I would send the bolt forward, safety engaged, make sure the optic is off, make sure the flashlight's not on. Close my dust cover, and this firearm is now ready to be stored. To properly load the AR-15, I will lock the bolt to the rear, checking my chamber is empty, take my magazine, firmly seat it, drop the bolt forward by pressing the top of the paddle, do a press check. I have a round in the chamber, close my dust cover, engage my safety, check my optic, check my light. This firearm is ready to go. Now I'm going to demo doing all those things as a right-handed shooter. To check the status of this firearm, first thing I'm going to do, press the magazine release button with my trigger finger. I see I have a round in the magazine. Reseat, tug, press check, bolt forward, dust cover, selector is on safe. Optic check, light check. This firearm's ready to go. To unload it, I will remove the magazine, rack, charging handle back. Then I will switch hands. This is the only time I take my right hand off the fire controls, is to lock the bolt to the rear. There's no real easy way to do this that I know of, keeping your right hand on the grip of the gun. So I'll take my left hand, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push down on the paddle while taking my other hand, pulling back on the charging handle, locking it to the rear. You'll see that the bolt is locked open. I can now look inside the chamber, look inside the magazine well and the ejection port. This firearm is now unloaded. If I were to be putting this firearm away for storage, I would drop the bolt forward, close my dust cover, make sure my safety's on, dial my optic off, make sure my flashlight's off, and if you have covers for your optic, put those on as well. Alright, I hope you guys found that video helpful. I know every one of these videos I put out might reduce the risk of somebody accidentally killing themselves or having a disastrous situation happen with a firearm. If you know somebody that can benefit from this information, please feel free to share. I am not doing this for any reason other than I really want to help you guys out. So I've got lots of free time on my hands. I do have the equipment and the knowledge, and I'm qualified to teach you guys how to do this stuff. So I figured, why not show you the things you need to know so that you can be successful with your firearm. Have a great day, guys. See you on the next one.